The story begins at Lingen Django No. 7 Middle School on a quiet afternoon. Inside one of the classrooms, students are chatting quietly among themselves while a boy rests his head on his desk, fast asleep. But suddenly, the sleeping student snaps his eyes open in complete shock, gasping as if waking from a nightmare. Slamming his hands onto his desk, he stands up and shouts at the top of his lungs, "I refuse to accept this," instantly startling everyone in the room. Looking around at his surroundings in pure confusion, our main character desperately tries to make sense of where he is, wondering if he somehow ended up in hell. Unaware of what he's going through, his classmates immediately burst into loud laughter, treating his dramatic outburst like a complete joke. Two of his classmates whisper mockingly among themselves, calling Qin Fan a piece of trash and an abandoned stray dog who still cannot accept being kicked out of the Qin clan. Staring blankly at his intact hands, Qin Fan can barely believe he is still alive, clearly remembering the moment his body was crushed to powder. He then looks down at his desk, which is covered in cruel insults and graffiti like coward, loser, and abandoned pawn. That's when it dawns on him that he has actually regressed 500 years into the past, right back to the most agonizing period of his life when his family was cast out by the Qin clan. Back then, the powerful Qin group ruthlessly cast his family aside, calling them useless stumbling blocks and throwing them out on the street. Following their downfall, his classmate Wang Shizhen and his own fiancé Zhou Shuman openly mocked his family's ruin, celebrating his fall from grace. Despite being cast out, his parents worked tirelessly to build a small business from scratch, slowly turning their lives around. But just as hope returned, his wicked second uncle framed his parents, leading to their tragic arrest by the authorities. Unable to prove their innocence, both of his parents died unjustly in prison, leaving Qin Fan completely heartbroken and devastated. Things only got worse from there. The ruthless Du family targeted him next and brutally crippled his legs. To make matters even more tragic, his girlfriend Yinhua was dragged into the mess and forced to jump off a building to her death right before his eyes. Battered, bloody, and deprived of everything he held dear, Qin Fan was left crawling through the rain with nothing left. But right as he was on the absolute verge of death, a mystical floating cultivator suddenly appeared before him. Looking down at the dying youth, the ancient master declared that Qin Fan was actually the destined one chosen by the heavenly Tao. In his previous life, Qin Fan had followed his master to the cultivation world and spent 100 years training until he became the mortal body holy emperor of the Kengyuan continent. At his absolute peak, he was only a single lightning tribulation away from ascending to true immortality. But unfortunately, the unresolved hatred from his past birthed powerful inner demons, causing his tribulation to fail catastrophically. Instead of destroying his soul, the divine lightning sent him back in time, granting him a second chance at life. Realizing what has happened, a dark, dangerous smirk spreads across Qin Fan's face. He throws his head back and laughs maniacally right in the middle of class, thrilled that the heavens have not abandoned him. Watching his bizarre behavior, his classmates assume he has gone completely crazy and worry he might snap at any moment. One green-haired student even stands up, deciding to walk over and slap Qin Fan to put him back in his place. However, Qin Fan's eyes fill with terrifying resolve as he vows never to forgive those who wronged him in the past. Before the green-haired student can even reach him, Qin Fan slams his palm onto his desk, shattering it with a massive shockwave. Harnessing his dark aura, he silently swears revenge against the Qin clan, his second uncle, and the ruthless Du family. The violent explosion of force completely terrifies the entire classroom, knocking the green-haired bully backward in shock. Examining his hand, Qin Fan notes that while his teenage body can barely circulate a sliver of spiritual energy, it is already enough to begin his reign of vengeance. Suddenly, the classroom door swings open as a loud, angry voice commands everyone to be quiet. A middle-aged teacher storms inside, furious at the students for causing such a commotion during study hall. The green-haired bully and a female classmate immediately point fingers at Qin Fan, complaining that he woke up and started causing chaos. Looking at Qin Fan with pure disgust, the teacher scoffs at him, calling him a poor beggar with no upbringing whatsoever. Qin Fan glares back silently, remembering how this hypocritical teacher was always the most eager to kick him while he was down. The teacher angrily orders Qin Fan to get out and stand in the hallway as punishment, unaware that Qin Fan happens to know his dirty little secret. Knowing that this teacher bought his teaching certificate with money and actually only holds an elementary school diploma, Qin Fan wears a mocking smile as he prepares to shatter his career on the spot. The entire classroom gasps in utter shock, amazed that Qin Fan actually dared to talk back so recklessly to the Dean of Discipline. Furious at the disrespect, the Dean explodes in rage, screaming at Qin Fan and demanding if he knows who he is talking to. But unfazed, Qin Fan recalls how corrupt this Dean truly is, a principal's relative who takes bribes, forces poor students out, and covered up evidence for bullies in his past life. Pointing right at him, Qin Fan publicly exposes the Dean as a hypocritical fraud who steals lesson plans from underlings, driving the Dean into a panic as he screams for him to shut up. While Qin Fan was forced to submit to the school's corrupt authority in his past life, he now mockingly asks the Dean if he was not the one who demanded an answer in the first place. Trembling with anger, the Dean hands down an immediate 1-week suspension, promising a school-wide notice and severe punishment from the school board. But completely unbothered by the threat, Qin Fan simply turns and walks away, declaring that he will settle every debt from his past life starting right now. As Qin Fan smiles casually on his way out, the humiliation drives the Dean insane, leaving him determined to torment the boy even further. Crafting an evil scheme in his mind, the Dean resolves to bring Qin Fan's parents to the school and humiliate them in front of everyone once again. But before Qin Fan can step out of the doorway, he suddenly stops dead in his tracks. Turning back with a lethal glare in his eyes, Qin Fan coldly asks if the Dean really dared to bring up his family. In a split second, Qin Fan delivers a devastating slap across the Dean's face, knocking out teeth and sending him crashing to the floor. Turning to the stunned classroom, Qin Fan commands everyone's attention with overwhelming aura of authority. Looking over his shoulder with a cold, murderous gaze, he warns all of his classmates that anyone who dares to cross him will end up just like the Dean. Lying pitifully on the floor while holding his swollen face, the Dean stammers in terror, weakly threatening to expel him. But glaring down with absolute disdain, Qin Fan tells the Dean he should consider himself lucky that his upbringing kept him from giving more than just a single slap. Left clutching his agonizingly swollen cheek, the corrupt Dean can do nothing but whimper in pain and utter humiliation. Slinging his backpack over his shoulder, Qin Fan realizes he needs to become stronger fast and hurry home to handle an urgent matter on this timeline. Half an hour later, the scene shifts to the quiet, impoverished slums on the edge of the city. Walking through the narrow, familiar alleyways, Qin Fan looks up at the sky, still amazed that he has truly returned home after 500 years. Qin Fan reflects on how this small house left by his grandmother was the only reason his family survived after being kicked out by the Qin clan. As he approaches his old home, a voice suddenly calls out his nickname, catching him completely off guard. It's his father wiping down his bicycle and his mother doing laundry, both confused to see him back during school hours. Seeing his parents alive and well brings tears to Qin Fan's eyes, remembering how in his past life his second uncle prevented him from ever seeing them before their execution. Noticing their son crying, his parents immediately rush to comfort him, asking if he was bullied at school and reassuring him that they will always protect him. Overwhelmed with emotion, Qin Fan pulls both of them into a tight embrace, telling them that everything is fine and he simply missed them. His parents hold him back tightly, though they glance at each other in complete confusion over his sudden emotional outburst. Smiling warmly, his father encourages him to be strong like a real man, and Qin Fan cheerfully promises that he will become stronger than anyone else. Looking at his parents with deep affection, Qin Fan silently vows to protect both of them with his life this time around. Just as his father praises him, a high-end luxury car suddenly pulls up and stops right in front of their home. Hearing a familiar, arrogant voice call out from inside the vehicle, Qin Fan turns his head toward the street in annoyance. Stepping out of the luxury car is Zhou Yihong, the president of the Zhou Group, a man Qin Fan remembers as an ungrateful traitor from his past life. While his father warmly greets old Zhou, Qin Fan glares silently, remembering how this hypocrite gained his parents' trust, only to help his second uncle ruin their family. Before Jo Ehong can speak, an arrogant girl's voice shouts from inside the car, telling him to stop wasting time with poppers. Stepping out in a revealing purple dress is Jo Shumin, Jo Ehong's 18-year-old daughter, and Kunfan's fiancée, who looks down on his family with utter contempt. Kunfan watches her snobbish display in silence, completely unbothered by her arrogance. Pointing her finger aggressively at his parents, Jo Shumin announces that she is here to break off their engagement, declaring that they belong to two completely different worlds. Kunfan inwardly agrees that they really are from two different worlds, though she has no idea that he is the immortal emperor looking down on her from above. Stepping forward with a calm smile, Kunfan flatly denies her attempt to break off the engagement on her own terms, knowing his revenge is only just starting. Stunned by his unexpected rejection, Jo Shumin furiously asks what he means, insulting him as a toad dreaming of eating swan meat. Furious at Jo Shumin's arrogance, Kunfan's mother snaps back, reminding them that it was the Jo family who originally begged for this engagement. Jo Ehong pretends to play the good cop by telling his daughter to speak politely, though she angrily protests that Kunfan's family is no longer part of the Qin clan. Stepping in, Kunfan reminds Jo Ehong that it was his father who saved the Jo family back then, not the Qin clan as a whole, and he exposes how his father funded Jo Ehong's tuition, provided business capital, and made connections for him. Realizing the father and daughter are playing good cop and bad cop to manipulate his parents, even though Kunfan's father tries to excuse their betrayal, Jo Ehong sincerely admits his debt while still insisting that his daughter's happiness comes first. Jo Shumin arrogantly offers 10 million yuan to buy back the contract, while her father fakes anger and claims the money is meant to repay old Qin's kindness. Kunfan mockingly asks if Jo Shumin's happiness is only worth 10 million, remembering how in his past life, Jo Ehong used this deal to ruin his parents and completely betray them. Infuriated, Jo Shumin lunges forward, shouting at Kunfan not to refuse their offer or think an old contract gives him any leverage over them. She attempts to slap him across the face, calling him a worthless loser who is not fit to be her match. But without flinching, Kunfan catches her wrist mid-swing with ease, stopping her strike dead in its tracks. Twisting her arm with terrifying force, Kunfan glares at her, warning that she is only surviving today because his parents are watching. Jo Shumin winces in agony, shocked by the terrifying physical strength in the hands of a boy she considered weak. With a cold shout, Kunfan hurls her to the ground, sending her crashing onto the pavement in complete embarrassment. As Jo Ehong rushes to help his daughter up, Kunfan casually warns him that a ruined reputation for ungratefulness could destroy the Jo group entirely. While his daughter curses Kunfan, Jo Ehong desperately tries to salvage the situation, begging old Qin and his family to sit down and negotiate calmly. But turning his back on them, Kunfan tells Jo Ehong that if he wants to talk, he must bring his daughter to kneel 100 times in front of their doorstep first. Reassuring his parents, Kunfan gently ushers them back inside their home, telling them to trust his judgment this time. Furious at her humiliation, Jo Shumin vows to kill Kunfan, but her father insists they retreat for now since they failed to retrieve the contract. Seething with hidden rage, Jo Ehong realizes his original plan is ruined and cannot understand how Kunfan suddenly became so bold and sharp. As he helps his furious daughter into the luxury car, Jo Ehong assures her with a sinister glare that he has plenty of dirty methods left to destroy Kunfan's family. Sitting inside his luxury car, Jo Ehong fumes with anger, convincing himself that Kunfan is only bluffing because he holds the engagement contract over them. He vows that Kunfan's family will suffer a miserable end just as the Qin clan desires, ordering his driver to pull away as he swears revenge. The luxury car speeds away down the road, leaving behind a trail of dust in the alley. Watching them leave from his window, Kunfan realizes the Jo family will stop at nothing to regain the contract, making it necessary for him to strike first. Turning back inside, his mother gently holds his face in worry, with both parents asking why he seems so remarkably different today. Reassuring them, Kunfan places his hand over his mother's, explaining that he simply had an epiphany and decided it is time to live his life differently. With absolute conviction, he promises that from now on, no one will ever bully or insult him again, nor will anyone ever harm his parents. His parents stand completely speechless, deeply moved yet astonished by their son's newfound maturity and strength. Blaming themselves for letting him suffer in the past, his parents tearfully embrace him, declaring that no matter what, he will always be their pride and joy. Qin Fan comforts them as he vows inwardly that as the dignified Ashura heavenly sovereign, he will completely rewrite the rules of this world. Later that night, Qin Fan slips out in a hoodie, leaping across the rooftops of the city under the moonlight. Noticing how thin the spiritual energy on Earth is, he moves swiftly across the cityscape in search of an ideal location to cultivate. Following the faint trace of ambient energy, his feet land solidly on a stone ledge overlooking a secluded body of water. Standing atop a high ledge by the lake on the bright full moon, he senses the ambient energy lingering around the quiet waters. Sensing a surprisingly rich deposit of spiritual energy right nearby, Qin Fan smiles at his good fortune. He leaps off the ledge and lands effortlessly on a large stone sitting right in the middle of the lake. Feeling the dense spiritual energy surrounding the lake, Qin Fan realizes that absorbing it entirely will allow him to break through to the Qi refining stage. Sitting cross-legged on the stone, he reflects that starting over from the beginner stage is actually a blessing in disguise. He recalls how his rapid progress in his past life left him with an unstable foundation, making him vulnerable to inner demons during his lightning tribulation. Swirling massive columns of spiritual energy around himself, Qin Fan vows to build a flawless foundation this time so he can successfully ascend to immortality. As the morning sun rises, Qin Fan completes his overnight cultivation session, surrounded by the peaceful morning light. Opening his eyes, he exhales smoothly as the swirling spiritual energy retracts back into his body. Suddenly, a brilliant golden light flashes in his eyes, signaling a major breakthrough during his meditation. Thrilled by the surprise, Qin Fan realizes that while clearing his meridians, he unlocked the fairy golden eyes from the legacy of the victorious fighting Buddha. Though his low cultivation level prevents it from dealing heavy damage right now, he notes that its basic clairvoyance will prove extremely useful. Nearby, an elderly man in traditional attire watches Qin Fan with amusement, commenting on how rare it is to see a youth meditating at dawn. Known as Elder Yi, the former warlord practices his martial arts while wondering why a young boy would be meditating in the park so early. Noticing the old man, Qin Fan chuckles playfully and tells him he was simply absorbing the essence of the sun and moon. Waving goodbye to the elder, Qin Fan decides to head straight home before his parents notice he snuck out. Watching the boy walk away with such confidence, Elder Yi smiles, finding Qin Fan quite interesting. A suit-wearing bodyguard steps out from behind a tree, suggesting to Elder Yi that they investigate the suspicious boy, but Elder Yi dismisses the idea, considering Qin Fan just a kid before asking when his granddaughter Shiwen's flight will be arriving. Looking up at the clear sky, the fond grandfather smiles warmly, looking forward to spending quality time with his returning granddaughter. Arriving back at his house, Qin Fan calls out cheerfully to his parents as he steps inside. His mother asks why he was out so early, and Qin Fan hands her a fresh bag of breakfast, claiming he went out for a morning run. Meanwhile, a shady thug watches Qin Fan's house from down the street while confirming his target's identity over the phone. Grinning villainously, the thug accepts the hit job, mocking Qin Fan as nothing more than an easy target. On the other end of the line, Joe Schumann relaxes on a luxury sofa, instructing the thug not to kill Qin Fan yet so she can slowly torture him. Sensing the thug outside, Qin Fan realizes the Zhou family acted quickly, just as his worried mother reveals that the school called about his incident. As his father offers to negotiate with the school, Qin Fan calmly tells them not to worry since he simply taught the corrupt dean a lesson while inwardly wondering how much Zhou Schumann paid her hitman. Reassuring his parents, Qin Fan confidently predicts that within 3 days, the dean will personally come to their doorstep to apologize. His parents are left completely baffled by his outrageous claim, staring at him in disbelief. As he runs back outside, Qin Fan calls out to his mother that he will be using his suspension to train his body. Waving back with a bright smile, he promises that his training will allow him to protect their family in the future. Watching him run off, his mother notes in awe that her son has truly changed into a completely different person. Returning to the lake, Qin Fan meditates as spiritual energy rushes into his body at an incredible speed thanks to his 500 years of cultivation memories. Focusing his mind, Qin Fan feels confident that it will not be long before he steps across the threshold of immortal cultivation. Resting in a nearby pavilion, Elder Yi notices the boy returning while his bodyguard senses something unusual happening. The bodyguard panics as he realizes the surrounding air is shifting rapidly and environmental energy is being violently drained away. Sensing the unnatural phenomenon, Elder Yi turns toward the lake in sheer astonishment. Watching the massive currents of energy gather around Qin Fan, Elder Yi wonders if the boy is actually cultivating. But just as Qin Fan reaches a critical point in his cultivation, a gang of hired thugs arrives at the lake. The red-haired thug leader cracks his knuckles with a malicious grin, telling his men that someone paid a hefty sum to beat up the brat. Unaware of the danger approaching from behind, Qin Fan remains seated on the rock as spiritual energy swirls softly around him. Approaching the water's edge, the leader boasts about taking such an easy, lucrative hit job and warns Qin Fan that disaster has arrived. Seeing the thugs cornering the boy, the bodyguard asks Elder Yi if he should step in and handle the situation. But calmly sipping his tea, Elder Yi instructs his guard to wait and observe whether the boy truly possesses extraordinary strength. Enraged by Qin Fan's silence, the thug leader commands his goon to film the beatings so they can send the video to Joe. Raising a thick wooden bat, the thug leader swings it down directly at Qin Fan's head while shouting at his goon not to miss a single scream. But without even turning his head, Qin Fan nonchalantly raises his arm and catches the blow, shattering the wooden bat upon impact. The thug leader stares in total shock as his weapon shatters into pieces against Qin Fan's arm. With a single fluid counterattack, Qin Fan strikes the thug leader with the broken stick, sending him flying backward through the air. Standing up calmly from the boulder while holding the broken stick, Qin Fan tells the remaining goons that they arrived at the perfect time. Surrounding himself with glowing spiritual energy, Qin Fan announces that he will use them to warm up his limbs now that he has reached the Qi stage. Crawling out from the bushes, the battered leader furiously orders his goons to swarm Qin Fan and beat him together. Motivated by greed, the goons charge forward all at once, shouting that the boy is worth 200,000. But Qin Fan effortlessly dodges their assault and delivers a brutal high kick straight into a goon's jaw. In the same motion, he swings his stick and slams another attacker onto the ground, leaving him screaming in pain. Watching his entire gang get wiped out in seconds, the thug leader grits his teeth in utter disbelief. Watching from the pavilion, the bodyguard admits the boy has incredible skills while Elder Yi chuckles, finding the situation increasingly fascinating. Suddenly, a young girl's voice calls out, "Grandpa," surprising both Elder Yi and his guard. Dropping his stick beside the defeated thugs, Qin Fan complains that they were too weak to even count as a warm-up, terrifying the trembling thug leader. Looming over the terrified leader, Qin Fan coldly declares his name, warning that no one will ever provoke him again. Glaring down, Qin Fan remembers how this exact gang of thugs had ambushed and beaten him in his previous life as well. Back then, they cornered him in a dirty alleyway and brutally beat him without mercy. His past attacker grabbed his hair, threatening him never to speak to outsiders or try clinging to the Zhou family again. The thug had even threatened to destroy Qin Fan and his parents together if he ever stepped out of line again. Snapping back to reality, the thug leader bursts into tears, desperately begging Qin Fan for mercy and blaming the Zhou family for ordering the hit. When Qin Fan demands the money Zhou Shuman paid him, the terrified thug immediately hands over the bank card and stammers out the password. Taking the gold card, Qin Fan smirks as he realizes Zhou Shuman tried to silence him to protect her reputation, resolved to make her pay dearly. Just as Qin Fan prepares to leave with the card, a silver-haired girl suddenly shouts for him to stop right where he is. Misunderstanding the situation, Xiaoquan accuses him of gathering a crowd to brawl and rob people in broad daylight, ignoring her grandfather who calls after her. Taking advantage of her entrance, the battered thug leader tearfully pleads with her for help, claiming Qin Fan beat up all his brothers. But without wasting a single breath on the thug's lies, Qin Fan delivers a vicious kick directly to his face, shutting him up instantly. The thug leader slumps onto the grass with a bloody nose, groaning pitifully in pain. Xiaoquan gasps in sheer shock, stunned that the boy would brutally kick someone right in front of her. Turning to the trembling goon, Qin Fan confirms that everything was recorded on camera, inwardly thanking Zhou Shuman for sending such incompetent hitmen. Looking at the gold card with a confident smile, he resolves to prepare a massive surprise for Zhou Shuman the next time they meet. As Qin Fan orders the goon to send the video, Xiaoquan angrily rushes forward, furious that he is completely ignoring her commands. Swiping at him, she declares that no thug making a mess will escape. But Qin Fan casually sidesteps her attack and tries to tell her she has misunderstood. Refusing to listen, Xiaoquan launches a fierce martial arts attack, telling him he can explain his side of the story to the police. Executing a high kick, she tries to strike him down, but Qin Fan effortlessly sways out of the way and critiques her form as flashy yet empty. In a split second, Qin Fan slides behind her and grabs her shoulder, locking her movements as she struggles angrily to break free. Seeing his young mistress captured, Elder Ye's bodyguard charges in like a bullet, yelling at Qin Fan to unhand her immediately. But without letting go of Xiaoquan, Qin Fan casually extends his free hand and blocks the bodyguard's full-force punch head-on, creating a fiery impact. Both Elder Yi and Xiaoquan gasp in complete disbelief, amazed that a high school boy could effortlessly block a trained martial artist's strike. Glancing at the bodyguard's fist, Qin Fan notes that he is a trained martial artist and remarks that since he initiated the fight, surrounding his palm with blue spiritual aura, Qin Fan asks if it is fine for him to get a little serious as well. With a swift palm strike, Qin Fan unleashes a burst of spiritual force that knocks the heavy bodyguard flying backward. The bodyguard skids across the lawn, clutching his chest in pain, prompting Elder Yi to rush over in worry. Xiaoquan panics in total shock, realizing Uncle Wang, the military region's top soldier king and a martial artist at the peak of Hidden Gene, was just defeated. She can barely comprehend how an elite military operative was taken down by a high school teenager in a single move. Admitting that Qin Fan showed mercy by only dislocating his bone, Uncle Wang concedes defeat, prompting Elder Yi to apologize for his group's recklessness. Elder Yi assures the young man that they harbor no ill will, explaining to his surprised granddaughter that Qin Fan was actually the victim being attacked. As Xiaoquan stammers in confusion, Qin Fan smirks and casually confirms they beat up the hitmen hired by his fiancée and stole their commission fees right back. Hearing this, Xiaoquan is stunned while the defeated thugs on the grass beg for mercy and blame the Zhou family for ordering the attack. Qin Fan gently lets go of Xiaoquan's wrist, causing her to blush in embarrassment as he steps close to her, teasingly advising her to direct her strong sense of justice toward the right people next time. Qin Fan leaves Xiaoquan stammering an apology for her misunderstanding. Impressed by his grace, Elder Yi cups his hands in respect and asks if they can become acquainted so he can make up for today's incident. Qin Fan dismisses the offer of compensation but offers a crucial piece of advice since meeting today was fate. Looking closely at the old man, Qin Fan urges Elder Yi to get a full body checkup at the hospital right after taking his bodyguard there. His ominous medical warning leaves both Elder Yi and Xiaoquan completely stunned. As Qin Fan walks off into the distance, Elder Yi realizes the boy must be a legendary transformation realm grandmaster to beat Xiaowang so easily, resolving to follow his advice. Xiaoquan stammers in disbelief, unable to wrap her head around how someone so young could reach such an impossible level of martial arts mastery. Elder Yi declares that encountering such an extraordinary young master is a godsend opportunity for the prestigious Yi family. Watching his departing figure, Elder Yi inwardly predicts that Qin Fan will inevitably become the strongest peak existence in the entire history of wuxia. Meanwhile, in a luxurious mansion, a phone smashes into a mirror with a violent crash as someone screams in rage. Watching the video recording of Qin Fan wiping out her hitmen, Zhou Shuman trembles in rage, unable to believe the trash she looked down on possesses such terrifying strength. Suspicion creeps into her mind as she wonders if Qin Fan had been hiding his true power and pretending to be weak all along. But brushing off her fear, Zhou Shuman cold-heartedly snorts, convincing herself that a little martial skill is useless against the absolute wealth and power of the Zhao group. Applying lipstick at her vanity table, Zhou Shuman scoffs at the thought of Qin Fan's so-called surprise, mocking Qin Fan as an arrogant fool. She chuckles that her father's trap is already set and she cannot wait to watch him beg on his knees. Meanwhile, at Qin Fan's house, his parents are stunned to hear about a sudden offer of 6 million yuan in relocation compensation for their land. As Qin Fan eats lunch, his mother explains that someone offered 6 million for their plot, planning to use the money to restart their business. Qin Fan immediately smells a rat, recalling that in his past life, his parents used 10 million from the Zhou family as startup capital before getting framed. As his father excitedly talks about making a comeback with the money, Qin Fan steps in and tells his parents to let him handle the land transaction. Both of his parents look at him in total confusion, surprised by his sudden request. Reassuring them with a smile, Qin Fan claims that 6 million is far too low and promises to force the buyers to offer a much better price. Later that evening, the scene shifts to the grand exterior of Zhangzhou's largest underground casino. Dressed in a stunning high-end dress, Zhou Shuman enters the casino alongside young master Sun Yiming, soaking in compliments from the crowd. Accompanied by noble young master Sun Yiming, Zhou Shuman giggles bashfully, claiming she has been preparing for this high-class gathering for a long time. The casino is packed with celebrities and elites as the event is hosted by the prestigious Yi family to bring the younger generation together. Walking through the crowd, Zhou Shuman vows to steal the spotlight on the anniversary of Jianzhou's top underground casino. Suddenly, the crowd murmurs about an abandoned son of the Qin family betting 200,000 chips on a single round, catching Zhou Shuman's attention. Over at the gaming table, the dealer announces that Qin Fan has officially won 2 million yuan in chips on a single bet. Sipping his wine, Qin Fan glances up with a smirk, casually greeting Zhou Shuman. Holding his wine glass, Qin Fan mockingly tells her he was worried about having no one to gamble with, leaving Zhou Shuman utterly stunned. The surrounding elites whisper mockingly among themselves, assuming Qin Fan is a penniless loser trying his luck at the casino out of desperation. Flashing the gold bank card, Qin Fan cheekily announces that his starting capital of 200,000 was generously sponsored by Miss Zhou herself. When Sun Yiming suspiciously asks if she knows the boy, Zhou Shuman dismisses Qin Fan as nothing more than an irrelevant remnant of her father's past. Furious, Zhou Shuman glares at Qin Fan, shouting that this high-class venue is no place for a poor beggar like him. Joining the phrase, Sun Yiming arrogantly insults Qin Fan as trash and a stray dog thrown out by the Qin family, claiming Zhou Shuman only gave him money out of charity. But Qin Fan leans back unbothered, chuckling that whether Zhou Shuman truly belongs to Sun Yiming is still up in the air. He pulls out the sealed marriage contract, offering to hand it over alongside all his casino chips if Zhou Shuman can beat him in a game. When Qin Fan threatens to display the marriage contract in public, a panicked Zhou Shuman immediately agrees to the bet, demanding that Qin Fan leave forever if he loses. Zhou Shuman lets Sun Yiming step up to play on her behalf, eager to crush Qin Fan in public. Qin Fan proposes a simple dice game where high roll wins, daring Sun Yiming to accept the challenge. Confident in his gambling skills, Sun Yiming sneers that Qin Fan is bringing about his own destruction. The crowd snickers among themselves, calling Sun Yiming a dice expert while mocking Qin Fan for making a fool of himself. Shaking the brass dice cup with practiced skill, Sun Yiming boasts that they will see whose roll comes out higher, while Qin Fan holds his own dice cup effortlessly, wearing a calm, amused smirk throughout the process. Both players slam their dice cups down onto the green felt table at the exact same moment. Sun Yiming reveals his result of 26 points, drawing cheers from the crowd as his odds of winning look overwhelming. But lifting his cup with a relaxed smile, Qin Fan casually announces his victory, shocking the entire audience. The dealer officially declares Qin Fan the winner of the round, leaving Sun Yiming and Zhou Shuman completely speechless. Resting his chin on his hand beside huge piles of chips, Qin Fan calmly informs Zhou Shuman that she has lost. Refusing to accept her defeat, a furious Zhou Shuman demands a best 2 out of 3 rematch, claiming 2 million is nothing to her. Agreeing without hesitation, Qin Fan raises the stakes further, offering to mortgage his house for 6 million yuan in the next round. As Qin Fan slides the document forward, Zhou Shuman gasps, realizing that the 6 million figure matches an exact sum. Her mind races in shock as she recognizes that 6 million yuan is the exact price her father offered to buy out Qin Fan's family house. Noticing that his opponents are running out of funds, Qin Fan casually suggests letting the eager spectators join in on the wager, causing the greedy crowd to immediately jump at the opportunity. Refusing to back down, the arrogant rich duo eagerly matches the raised stakes, confident that their massive fortune and family backing will strip our protagonist of everything he has. Determined to crush Qin Fan once and for all, young master's son forcefully slams his dice cup onto the table, aggressively declaring that the lowest score wins this crucial round. When Sun reveals a surprisingly low total of just 7 points from 5 dice, the surrounding crowd bursts into cheers, fully convinced that there is no way our hero can beat that roll. As Sun proudly taunts him and tells him to go beg on the streets with his family, Qin Fan remains completely unbothered, calmly telling the arrogant young master to take a closer look. With a confident smirk, our MC slowly lifts his cup to reveal a breathtaking total of 6 points, clinching an unbelievable victory over Sun by a single point. Once again, the entire room instantly freezes in utter shock, unable to comprehend how Qin Fan managed to pull off another miraculous win by the narrowest possible margin. To rub salt into their fresh wounds, our protagonist flashes a playful grin and mockingly asks if they would like to try a best 3 out of 5 or best 4 out of 7. The frustrated spectators refuse to believe their eyes, shouting in outrage as they demand another round to see if his impossible winning streak can actually keep going. However, a suffocating silence falls over Sun and his partner, who stand completely paralyzed as the terrifying realization dawns on them that they have just lost everything. Drenched in cold sweat, the casino dealer nervously steps forward to announce the final outcome, declaring that Qin Fan has officially won a staggering total of 1 billion chips. Surrounded by massive mountains of chips, Qin Fan tauntingly asks why everyone went quiet, mocking the so-called prominent families for running out of cash so easily. Unable to accept his complete ruin, young Master Sun loses his temper entirely, furiously screaming that Qin Fan must have used dirty tricks to cheat his way to victory. As our hero casually prepares to gather his immense earnings and leave, a polite casino staff member approaches him from behind to interrupt his departure. Maintaining a rigid, respectful posture, the staff member informs Qin Fan that the casino's head manager has requested a private meeting with him in the reception room. Showing zero concern, Qin Fan agrees to go along, casually instructing the staff to cash out his chips so he can collect his billions. Right after the meeting, watching him walk off, the ruined rich pair gleefully assumes that since this manor belongs to the powerful Yi family, Qin Fan is guaranteed to pay with his life for cheating. Qin Fan is escorted into a sleek private office where a sharp man wearing glasses quietly greets him, welcoming him directly to the core of Shanchu Manor. Revealed as Long Wu, the casino's head manager and gambling expert, the man leans back in his chair and coldly demands that Qin Fan explain exactly how he cheated. Nonchalantly picking his ear, Qin Fan claims it was all pure luck, secretly chuckling that while using his X-ray vision and spiritual energy is cheating, it only counts if they can prove it. Looking over Qin Fan's file, Long Wu scoffs in utter contempt, finding it absurd that a discarded family son with no gambling experience would dare try to target Shanchu Manor. Eager to shatter our hero's calm composure, the arrogant manager signals his 2 imposing bodyguards to move in and beat Qin Fan to a pulp. But without batting an eye, Qin Fan unleashes a sudden wave of blue energy, casually remarking that Shanchu Manor's crude hospitality is truly a huge disappointment. Meanwhile, at another luxurious suite, the owner of Shanchu Manor is calmly talking on the phone with his daughter, telling her to take good care of the old master's medical checkup. But right as he settles back with a cigar, his desk phone begins to ring frantically with an urgent distress call from inside the building. Annoyed by the sudden interruption, Yizu snaps into the receiver only to hear his head manager screaming desperately over the line for immediate help. Battered and lying helpless on the floor, Long Wu panics into the phone, frantically informing his boss that an intruder has effortlessly taken down all their guards. As Yizu roars in disbelief and demands to know who could possibly be behind the attack, Qin Fan smoothly plucks the phone right out of the manager's hand. Taking over the call, our MC politely introduces himself and tells the big boss that since his manager refuses to cash out his winnings, they will just have to talk face to face. Leaving the ruined room behind, Qin strolls down a paved courtyard while the limping manager scurries after him, desperately spitting threats. Long Wu boasts that the Yi family are powerful warlords ruling Huaxia's underground, warning Qin that even kneeling and begging won't save his life now. He continues to brag that regardless of Qin's martial tricks, the big boss is guarded by formidable hidden experts that no normal fighter can ever defeat. As the manager claims these guards will destroy him, our protagonist secretly scoffs, realizing Earth's martial artists haven't even touched true cultivation and thinking he came here to recruit a helper. Hearing that Qin wants the Yi family as his backing, Long Wu laughs like he is insane, but our hero calmly warns that if the boss refuses a fair deal, he will happily use force. Reflecting on his options, Qin acknowledges that despite operating underground, the Yi family carries far more honor and better principles than his own hypocritical relatives. Remembering how fairly the Yi family treated his parents in his past life, our MC decides that aligning with them will handle all his worldly troubles so he can focus purely on cultivation. Still completely clueless about who he is talking to, Long Wu mocks the discarded young master, bursting into laughter at his sheer arrogance. But before he can finish mocking him, heavy footsteps echo across the path as a group of men in sharp suits arrive carrying large metallic suitcases. Believing his reinforcements have finally arrived, Long Wu erupts in excitement and eagerly orders the men to jump forward and murder the brat immediately. But to the manager's complete horror, the entire squad suddenly bows down in deep reverence before Qin, respectfully welcoming him as their honored Lord Qin. Long Wu's jaw drops in complete disbelief, utterly paralyzed by shock as Qin blinks in mild surprise at the sudden display of respect. Stepping out from behind the guards, Boss Yi Jizu bows politely and apologizes profusely to Qin for delaying his cash payout and failing to welcome him properly. He then gestures to two open briefcases overflowing with stacks of cash, officially presenting Qin with his full 1 billion in winnings. Still lying battered on the ground, Long Wu desperately cries out to his boss, unable to comprehend why he is showing such immense respect to a discarded Qin family son. Furious at his manager's utter stupidity, Yi Jizu turns around and delivers a fierce backhand slap across Long Wu's face, sending his glasses flying. As the manager groans in shock, Yi Jizu orders the guards to strip him of his position and punish him severely under strict military regulations. While the terrified manager is dragged away, screaming for mercy, Yi Jizu introduces himself to Qin as the fourth-generation heir and owner of the manor. Holding Qin's hand, Yi Jizu begs for forgiveness on behalf of his foolish staff, offering to fulfill any request our hero has to make up for the disrespect. Wondering why Yi Jizu is being so accommodating, Qin points out that this is their first meeting, only for the boss to reveal that his father praised Qin as a noble savior. Hearing this unexpected explanation, our protagonist blinks in surprise, wondering who this influential father could possibly be. Suddenly, a luxury white helicopter descends directly over the courtyard with a loud voice shouting out from the open door as Qin looks up in shock. The helicopter door opens to reveal the spirited silver-haired girl waving enthusiastically, accompanied by her dignified grandfather sitting calmly beside her. As Yi Jizu happily greets his daughter, Qin instantly puts the pieces together, realizing the old man he saved earlier this morning is the family patriarch. The elderly man is none other than Yongjin, the grand patriarch of the Yi family and one of the highest-ranking military generals in the country. Yi Jizu asks why his father left his hospital checkup early, only for old General Yi to angrily scold him for nearly causing a disastrous mistake with their honored savior. Greeting the old general, Qin chuckles about their uncanny fate, while old Yi reveals he rushed over the moment he heard our hero was at his son's casino. Showing absolute humility, old General Yi bows deeply to offer his formal apologies, expressing his earnest desire for the Yi family to become Qin's allies. Following her grandfather's lead, the young miss bashfully bows her head, her cheeks flushing red as she quietly pays her respects to our protagonist. Graciously accepting their gesture, Qin agrees to form a friendship, inwardly pleased that their military instincts allowed them to recognize his true power. Overjoyed by his acceptance, Yi Jizu declares that Qin now commands the full loyalty of the Yi family, even offering to hand over Shanchu Manor as an apology. Accepting their alliance, Qin mentions that while they are friends now, physically lugging 1 billion in cash out of the casino might be a hassle, so Yi Jizu eagerly offers to handle it. Meanwhile, on the casino floor, Zhou Shuman fumes on the sofa next to young Master Sun, angrily complaining about how Qin ruined her mood and humiliated them. Sun reassures her that once the Yi family crushes Qin and refunds their money, they can watch him get thrown into the street. Only for a spectator to yell that Qin is back, and to everyone's sheer bewilderment, our hero casually struts back into the hall completely uninjured, flanked by the Manor's elite bodyguards carrying his cash briefcases. Qin casually instructs the bodyguards to load the money into his car first, and the elite guard bows in deep respect, calling him Lord Qin in front of the whole room. Hearing the Manor's top guards address the discarded outcast as Lord Qin, Sun and Zhou lose their minds in absolute shock. Approaching the stunned couple, Qin announces that since he collected all his winnings, he returns specifically to deliver one last chip to them. Flashing a taunting smile, our hero holds up their old engagement paper, mockingly addressing Zhou Shuman as his official fiancé. As Zhou Shuman pales in utter horror, young Master Sun stares at her in disbelief while the surrounding crowd erupts in juicy gossip about her secret engagement. The crowd whispers about how the Zhou family only built their fortune through Qin's father, turning Zhou into the centerpiece of an embarrassing scandal. Declaring that the treacherous Zhou family is completely unworthy of his lineage, Qin publicly rips the marriage contract in half, officially annulling their engagement. Tossing cash into the air with a satisfied smirk, our hero generously announces that the drinks for the entire casino tonight are on him. As Zhou Shuman screams in humiliation while the crowd laughs, an enraged young Master's son grabs her, suspecting she teamed up with Qin to scam his fortune. Zhou Shuman desperately screams that the contract means nothing, but Sun furiously pushes her away, declaring that a publicly dumped woman is completely beneath him. Glancing over his shoulder at the pair tearing each other apart, Qin chuckles to himself, hoping they enjoy the special surprise gift he prepared for them. As people scramble on the floor to pick up the scattered money, our MC smirks in satisfaction, knowing his grand revenge has only just begun. Later that evening, back at their modest apartment, Qin's mother happily cooks dinner, excited that today's earnings will let her prepare an extra meat dish tomorrow. Suddenly, a horn honks outside, pulling his parents to the window, where they stare in disbelief at a globally limited edition luxury car parked right below. The arrogant vice principal steps out of a car and rushes over to meet the driver, frantically calling out to his influential brother-in-law for help. It turns out to be the school principal who assures his brother-in-law that he even skipped Shanchu Manor's anniversary just to help him get revenge on Qin. Walking down the hallway, the corrupt principal boasts that he only kept Qin in school to torture him for the main Qin family, while the dean agrees that the boy was ungrateful. Seeing that the main Qin family no longer cares about the boy's fate, the principal menacingly declares that they should just kill Qin directly today. But as he storms into the apartment, boasting about teaching Qin a harsh lesson, he freezes in his tracks upon noticing two stern uniformed men inside. The imposing Yi family guards glare back in complete silence, emanating a heavy aura of authority that instantly chills the room. Caught completely off guard, the principal and dean break out into a cold sweat, thoroughly bewildered by the presence of these intimidating men. The corrupt duo nervously whispers to each other, wondering if they entered the wrong apartment and why armed soldiers would be inside such a rundown building. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out from the staircase above, recognizing them as the school principal and the dean of discipline. Our MC slowly strolls down the stairs in casual clothes, mockingly asking why his distinguished school directors didn't notify him of their visit in advance. Recovering from his initial shock, the principal furiously screams at Qin, commanding him to call his parents down so they can face punishment together. The principal snickers arrogantly, promising to make Qin kneel and cry for mercy for assaulting a teacher, completely oblivious to the guards closing in behind him. Before he can finish, the family guards violently slam both administrators to the floor, pinning them down while the panicked dean tries to explain who they are. Looking down at the struggling men like worthless pests, the head guard asks Qin how he wishes to handle these reckless fools. Addressing our hero as Lord Qin, the guard awaits his command, while Qin Fan smirks in satisfaction at how conveniently his enemies deliver themselves to his door. Hearing the formidable soldiers address the student as Lord Qin, the pinned dean pales in utter horror as he realizes whose men these actually are. Refusing to accept the situation, the principal screams in rage, believing Qin Fan just hired a group of common thugs to protect himself. As the principal boasts about his immense power and influence across the entire city, Qin Fan calmly approaches and commands the guard to put him down. Thinking our hero got scared by his status, the foolish principal smirks arrogantly and boasts that it is far too late for mercy. But before he can even finish his thought, Qin Fan delivers a devastating slap across his face, sending the arrogant principal spinning violently through the air. Watching his brother-in-law get effortlessly blasted across the room, the dean screams in sheer terror for his fallen principal. The Yi family guards break into enthusiastic cheers, eagerly hyping up our MC's ruthless move and celebrating his glorious strike. Clutching his swollen cheek, the principal gapes in utter disbelief, unable to fathom that a mere student actually dared to lay a hand on him. Before the principal can recover his composure, Qin Fan steps forward as the man falls heavily onto his knees on the floor. The principal screams in agony on the floor while the terrified dean trembles behind him, clutching his hands in absolute horror. Looking down at him coldly, Qin Fan exposes all of his dirty secrets, calling him scum for embezzling funds, taking bribes, harassing female teachers, and extorting students. Remembering his past life, our hero recalls how this corrupt man ruined innocent lives and secretly filmed Qin Fan being abused just to curry favor with the main Qin family. Hearing Qin Fan list out his exact hidden crimes, the principal breaks out into a cold sweat, terrified that his dark secrets have been laid bare. Desperate, the principal roars that Qin Fan is still just a powerless peasant, threatening to destroy him with a phone call. So our hero calmly invites him to call his strongest allies, and pulling out his phone with a sinister smirk, the principal thinks to himself that No. 7 Middle School is full of wealthy elites, including the second young master of the warlord Yi family. He boasts loudly that the Yi family could crush Qin Fan like a bug, prompting our hero to turn around with a smirk and pass the message to someone else in the room. Suddenly, Boss Yi Jizu steps into the room holding a gift box, looking completely stunned as Qin Fan mockingly asks for his input. With veins bulging in sheer fury, Yi Jizu frantically reassures our hero not to listen to the principal's suicidal nonsense. Recognizing the powerful head of Shanshu Manor himself, both the principal and the dean shriek in sheer horror, completely unable to believe his presence. Yi Jizu immediately clarifies to Qin Fan that his nephew only attended the school for its resources, firmly denying any official connection between the Yi family and this corrupt administration. Watching the high-ranking guards salute Yi Jizu with deep respect, the terrified dean finally realizes that these soldiers belong to the elite Yi family. Desperate to save himself, the principal crawls forward and grabs Yi Jizu's pant leg, weeping as he asks why a titan like him is protecting a discarded Qin outcast. Looking down at him like a corpse, Yi Jizu asks if a dead man is speaking, but Qin Fan notes that letting him die too quickly would be far too merciful. Realizing his fate is sealed, the principal goes completely white as his soul metaphorically leaves his body in sheer terror. Overwhelmed by shock and fear, the principal faints flat onto the floor, leaving the trembling dean stammering in total panic at Qin Fan's incredible backing. Completely losing his mind, the dean frantically screams at Qin Fan, demanding to know how on earth a mere high school student managed to enlist the supreme Yi family. Shrugging his shoulders with a nonchalant smile, Qin Fan casually replies that he simply visited the casino and won a little money, leaving the dean thoroughly bewildered. Moments later, the elite guards carry a lavish spread of gourmet dishes, serving a feast fit for royalty right inside the modest apartment. Returning home to the incredible sight, Qin Fan's parents sit at the feast-laden table, completely speechless as they look at their son. His father nervously asks what is happening, wondering if these high-status individuals really came all this way just to apologize to them. Panicked for their lives, the corrupt school officials bow on the floor, weeping and screaming frantic apologies for extorting the family in the past. As his parents recall how those forced fees ruined their finances, the principal grovels, confessing that he deliberately harassed them to curry favor with the Qin family. Yi Jizu coldly signals his guards to drag the groveling duo away, promising that the Yi family will expose all their crimes publicly and ensure they rot in prison. Reassuring his parents that school will no longer be a problem, Qin Fan smiles while his parents feel a deep sense of relief seeing justice served. Turning to Yi Jizu, our hero casually changes the subject, asking how his family's business negotiations went earlier today. Qin Fan's father happily reports that with the Yi family's backing, their new business setup went flawlessly, while Yi Jizu warmly insists that their families are now lifelong allies, suggesting his parents enjoy the feast. Qin Fan steps aside to have a private conversation with Yi Jizu, leaving his parents filled with gratitude. Entering a quiet room, Yi Jizu assures our MC that every humiliating video and record from the school has been scrubbed, which Qin Fan acknowledges with a nod. Handing over a box of prepared medicine, Qin Fan explains that the herbs gathered are sufficient to cure old General Yi, leaving Yi Jizu overjoyed with emotion. Satisfied with the Yi family's absolute loyalty, Qin Fan formally asks them to safeguard his parents, which Yi Jizu eagerly promises to fulfill without fail. Pausing with a serious expression, Yi Jizu hesitates for a moment before admitting that the Yi family actually needs a major favor from him in return. Inviting him to speak freely, Qin Fan listens as Yi Jizu explains that due to their military ties, their family frequently deals with top martial artists. He reveals that 9 years ago during a border conflict, their family suffered heavy losses against a deadly mercenary at the peak of the hidden Jin realm. That mercenary, Lan Jiashang, has now reportedly ascended to a transformation realm grandmaster, standing at the absolute pinnacle of China's martial arts world. Although the Yi family barely managed to defeat him back then and banish him for 10 years, his 10-year ban is ending, and he is bound to return seeking revenge. Realizing why they were so desperate to recruit him, Qin Fan asks if they wanted a powerful fighter, but Yi Jizu clarifies that they are seeking a true guardian deity. Bowing in total reverence, Yi Jizu declares that because of Qin Fan's monstrous potential, the Yi family is honored to serve as a stepping stone for his rise to power. Touched by their sincerity, Qin Fan extends his hand with a warm smile, remarking that he actually finds the entire Yi family quite likable. Shaking his hand with deep respect, Yi Jizu asks our hero to look after them in the future, sealing a powerful new alliance between them. Later that night, back in his room, Qin Fan sits cross-legged on his bed as vibrant blue spiritual energy swirls around him and his gathered herbs. Holding a yellow talisman, our MC contemplates the enemy, acknowledging that reaching the transformation realm on Earth makes someone virtually invincible among mortals. Igniting the talisman with a golden flame, a subtle smirk appears on his face as he admits he is actually looking forward to facing this formidable opponent. Controlling the golden fire at his fingertips, Qin Fan prepares to begin the intricate process of alchemical pill refinement. With a focused command, giant golden flames erupt into the room, engulfing the floating medicinal herbs to extract their pure essence. Due to the severe lack of spiritual energy in Earth's herbs, Qin Fan relies on sheer volume and multiple attempts to barely refine a basic body-refining pill. Examining the 3 golden pills in his hand, he sighs at his current low refinement efficiency, realizing he needs a better long-term strategy for alchemy. Since his current cultivation level is still low, he pops 1 pill into his mouth, noting that it is sufficient to strengthen his physical body for now. Channeling the pill's energy, Qin Fan activates the Kong Kong art, the absolute best foundational cultivation technique for his current stage. With absolute focus, he draws every drop of absorbed spiritual energy deep into his core, tightly compressing the power within his meridians. Opening his glowing eyes, he unleashes the compressed energy throughout his entire system to thoroughly temper and refine his physical flesh. The next morning, Qin Fan arrives at the Grand Yi family mansion, where 2 neat rows of servants and guards bow in deep reverence to welcome him. Old General Yi and his family greet our hero with joyful laughter, while Qin Fan casually offers a friendly morning greeting to the entire household. The old general happily reveals that doctors confirmed a miraculous recovery in his health after taking yesterday's preliminary medicine. Qin Fan warmly explains that yesterday's pill was just a mild test product to prepare his mortal body for today's comprehensive treatment. To ensure 0 distractions during the treatment, the family members excuse themselves to wait outside, trusting the old patriarch in Qin Fan's hands. As Qin Fan politely invites the old general to take a seat, he notices the red-jacketed youth lingering near the doorway before exiting. Watching the youth walk out, Qin Fan inwardly notes the name Yi Haoquan, recognizing him as an important member of the family's younger generation. Placing his hand over the old general's wrist, Qin Fan channels gentle blue spiritual energy to begin the treatment process. As he works, Qin Fan remembers his past life, recalling how Yi Haoquan was the only wealthy kid who tried to protect him when bullies beat him in the rain. Back then, while Qin Fan cowered helplessly on the ground, young Haoquan bravely stepped in between him and the bullies. The arrogant bully Yi Haolan claimed Qin Fan dirted his expensive sneakers, telling Yi Haoquan not to waste pity on a discarded Qin family outcast. When the bully demanded Qin Fan kneel or make his poor parents pay, Yi Haoquan selflessly offered to pay for the shoes out of his own pocket. But overcome by fear and intimidation, the young Qin Fan back then dropped to his knees on the wet pavement anyway. Yi Haoquan yelled at him to stand up with dignity, but Qin Fan bitterly replied that nobody could protect him forever. Fearing worse retaliation when Haoquan wasn't around, Qin Fan endured their relentless mocking as the bullies laughed at his cowardice. Haoquan argued that submitting wouldn't stop the abuse, but Qin Fan wept that without power or status, he had no means to fight back. Hearing his helpless plea, young Haoquan stood completely speechless, unable to refute the harsh reality facing the boy. Walking away in the rain, Haoquan coldly remarked that those who refuse to stand up for themselves aren't worth saving. Returning to the present, Qin Fan reflects that back then, fear and cowardice kept him from accepting Haoquan's genuine kindness. Since they weren't in the same class, their paths never crossed again after that rainy day in his past life. Marveling at fate, our MC smiles as he uses his supreme medical arts to completely mend old General Ye's internal organs. The vibrant spiritual energy rebinds the old general's damaged meridians, restoring full vitality to his aging body. Finishing the treatment, Qin Fan asks how he feels, and the old general leaps up in sheer ecstasy, exclaiming that he feels decades younger. Handing over a bottle of physique-strengthening pills for the family, Qin Fan leaves the old patriarch overwhelmed with gratitude. Flashing a warm smile, our hero casually tells him not to mention it, noting that he simply shares a special bond with the Yi family. Outside, the family tearfully embraces their fully restored patriarch, while Yi Haoquan stands stunned that the incurable condition was fixed so quickly. Grasping Qin Fan's hand, Yi Jizu vows that the Yi family will never forget this life-saving favor, while RMC assures him that this is only the beginning of their partnership. Excitedly accepting his request, Yi Jizu tells him to just give the command, so Qin Fan asks him to help locate places rich in spiritual energy like the nearby lake. Qin Fan also requests 5 extremely rare spiritual herbs, inwardly thinking that getting a head start on these items from his past life will allow the Yi family to secure them easily. Our hero mentions he will be returning to school to keep his parents happy, and Yi Jizu warmly chuckles, promising to keep his incredible powers a secret from his family. Yi Jizu reveals that the school leadership has been completely purged and replaced with Yi family personnel, proposing a grand celebration party in Qin Fan's honor. As Qin Fan reacts in surprise, Yi Jizu explains that grateful teachers and students are dying to know the identity of the unsung hero who freed their school from corruption. Declining a formal celebration, our hero humbly suggests organizing fun school activities instead, giving everyone a chance to relax and enjoy themselves. Soon after, No. 7 Middle School kicks off its grand spring sports meet under its brand new generous leadership. The students marvel at the massive scale of the event, surprised that the school spent so much effort on sports when previous meets were always neglected. Strolling along the tracks, students praise the anonymous hero behind the new management, totally unaware that the deity they are thanking is stretching nearby. While stretching on the field, Qin Fan reflects on his recent cultivation progress, thrilled to have completed his body refinement and unlocked the rudimentary hell-suppressing physique. Just as he eyes his next cultivation step, a cheerful voice calls out to him as the young Miss waves excitedly alongside Yi Haoquan. She blushes as she explains that her father transferred her into Qin Fan's class, secretly thinking to herself that our hero looks even more handsome than before. Qin offers a warm smile as the loudspeakers announce the official start of the competition, calling all students to assemble. Walking onto the field together, Qin glances at Yi Haoquan and casually asks if he has something on his mind. Haoquan hesitantly asks if the rumors about Qin defeating top martial artists are true, to which our hero smirks and promises to show him firsthand. A starter pistol fires into the air, signaling the commencement of the track running event. Before the other runners can even catch up, Qin blitzes through the course and crosses the finish line, leaving everyone gaping in absolute disbelief. Next up in the tennis tournament, our MC unleashes a monstrous smash that shatters the ball and craters the ground, leaving his opponent terrified. Moving on to the long jump competition, Qin launches off the board with explosive force, flying completely past the sand pit and shattering the world record in a single bound, leaving the measuring officials wide-eyed with shock. Moving to the basketball court, Qin throws down a ferocious slam dunk that shatters the entire backboard into pieces. Standing embarrassedly with the broken hoop in hand, our hero sighs to himself, realizing he needs to pull his punches even more around normal humans. The crowd erupts into wild cheers with the young miss cheering enthusiastically alongside her grandfather in the spectator stands. However, high up in the bleachers, a mysterious figure dressed in dark clothing watches Qin's display in complete silence. Speaking into his earpiece, a suspicious operative confirms that security is clear and orders his team to get into position for their move. Meanwhile, at the school swimming pool, the final aquatic events get underway as swimmers slice through the water. Naturally, Qin effortlessly takes first place for Class 1. Casually wiping water off his face as the referee announces his victory. Seeing his perfectly sculpted physique, the girls in the audience scream in excitement, completely smitten by how attractive he looks. Sitting beside her father, the young miss pouts jealously at the fangirls, while Yi Jizu chuckles that Qin seems to be enjoying himself. Old General Yi smiles warmly, remarking that a shallow pond could never hold a dragon like Qin forever. Catching his breath at the edge of the pool, Yi Haoquan gasps in awe at Qin's monstrous speed while our hero comments effortlessly. Patting off his shoulders, Qin genuinely compliments Haoquan, telling him that among ordinary mortals, he is easily top tier. Looking up earnestly from the water, Haoquan hesitates before asking how someone with such terrifying power could be the same weak boy from before. Haoquan admits that Qin feels like a completely different person now, prompting our hero to sit down at the poolside with a mysterious smile. Reaching out his hand toward Haoquan, Qin calmly tells him to simply consider him as a man who has crawled his way back from hell. Before Haoquan can process those words, Qin pulls him out of the pool, only for a crowd of enthusiastic schoolgirls to swarm them. The girls crowd around, offering water bottles and asking to be friends, leaving both Qin and Haoquan completely overwhelmed by the sudden attention. Gossip spreads like wildfire among the students, revealing that Qin won a fortune at the casino and secured backing from the legendary Yi family. The Fang girls gush over how good the two handsome boys look standing together, causing our hero and Haoquan to sweat drop awkwardly. Surrounded and squeezed from all sides by eager girls asking them to lunch, Qin and Haoquan struggle just to squeeze through the crowd. Trapped in the overwhelming embrace of their overzealous female classmates, Qin and Haoquan gasp in utter distress. Breaking free from the mob of Fang girls, the two boys bolt across the pool deck in their swim trunks as fast as their legs can carry them. Watching from above, the young miss pouts in annoyance at the clingy girls who shout frantically for the two boys to return. Frustrated, she complains that the fanatical girls scared Qin away before she could invite him to lunch, while her grandfather chuckles at her youthful jealousy. Observing the lively campus scene, Yi Jizu and Old General Yi share a stern glare, warning that anyone who attempts to ruin this peace will pay with their life. With sharp military senses, the Old General instantly detects a suspicious shadow sneaking up the stairwell in the distance. Meanwhile, a squad of armed mercenaries rushes up the stairs, confirming into their earpieces that they are moving in to capture their target alive. As the mercenaries burst open the classroom door, Qin's calm, mocking voice greets them from inside. Casually slipping on his jacket alongside Haoquan, our hero jokes that dealing with armed mercenaries is far easier than escaping a mob of fangirls. Slamming the door shut, the mercenaries smirk in disdain, casually planning to knock out Qin Fan and kidnap Yi Haoquan for their boss. But seconds later, horrific screams of agony and heavy thuds echo behind the closed doors as the mercenaries are brutally dismantled. Striding out of the room past a pile of beaten mercenaries, Qin Fan remarks that this was a joke while complimenting Haoquan's decent combat skills. Realizing that a massive squad of mercenaries has infiltrated the campus, Qin Fan watches as Haoquan dials his security team to initiate a lockdown. Qin Fan stresses that they need to clean up all the remaining enemies before lunch break ends so the afternoon sports events stay on schedule. Meanwhile, in the school cafeteria, another hidden mercenary stalks the young miss as she eats lunch by herself. Eating her meal alone, the young miss pouts about her family leaving for business while wondering where Qin Fan vanished to. As she blushes, her mind drifts off to Qin Fan's chiseled abs, admiring how much more muscular he looks since their first encounter. Shaking her head frantically to clear those romantic thoughts, she excuses her interest by reminding herself that he saved her grandfather's life. Deciding to track him down, she pulls out her phone to call Haoquan, assuming her cousin must be hanging out with Qin Fan. As she wonders why Haoquan isn't picking up, the lurking mercenary contacts his team, confirming that the Yi family's young miss is completely isolated and ready for capture. While the mercenary receives orders over his radio telling his leader to be careful, a shadowy figure silently drops down behind him out of nowhere. Before he can even react, a swift strike knocks the mercenary out cold, cutting his transmission short. Meanwhile, inside the school gymnasium, an ominous quiet hangs over the indoor basketball court. Looking up at old General Yi and Yi Jizu watching from the upper balcony, a long-haired man snickers arrogantly about the patriarch's age. Introduced as Jian Long, a martial artist at the peak of the hidden Jin realm, he struts out of the court with his mercenaries, mocking the Yi family. Yi Jizu angrily demands to know if Lan Jiasheng sent him before their 10-year agreement expired, but Jian Long mockingly asks if they are already trembling in fear. Flexing his claw-like hand, Jian Long vows that they will force the Yi family to pay back every bit of the debt from his master's humiliating exile 9 years ago. Flanked by armed guards, Yi Jizu roars back that traitors who sold out their country to foreign enemies don't deserve to set foot on Chinese soil. Indifferent to the accusation, Jian Long shrugs off his treason, claiming they are simply mercenaries who sell their lethal skills to the highest bidder. In the background, hidden snipers click their scopes into place. Suddenly, multiple red laser sights lock directly onto Jian Long's body, and old General Yi asks if a mere stray dog thinks he can bark in his presence. Standing with arms crossed on the balcony, old General Yi declares with absolute authority that Huaxia is protected by his bloodline. Unfazed by the snipers, Jian Long pulls out his radio with a sickening grin, reminding them that everyone in this school is currently hostage to his men. He boasts that his infiltrated men are ready to massacre students and eliminate the Yi family's heirs the instant he gives the word over his radio. To Jian Long's surprise, Yi Jizu doesn't panic at all, coldly daring the mercenary to try giving that order. Enraged by their confidence, Jian Long hits the call button on his radio to order a massacre, only to get static silence on the other end. Instead of his squad leaders answering, a strange calm voice echoes through his walkie-talkie, and footsteps echo across the gym entrance as someone remarks over the comms that only the final boss is left standing. Striding onto the court with his jacket open, Qin Fan casually greets them holding the mercenary's radio, leaving Jian Long completely stunned. A terrified mercenary reports that every single squad across campus has gone silent, leaving Jian Long in utter disbelief that all his men were wiped out so fast. Looking down from the balcony, Yi Jizu reveals to Jian Long that the Yi family tracked their movements from the moment they crossed the border, laying a trap specifically to lure them in. Qin Fan cracks his knuckles casually, adding that finding the mercenaries was effortless because martial artists stick out like sore thumbs among normal students while an exhausted Haoquan catches up. Jian Long's eyes widen in absolute horror as he realizes this high school kid single-handedly hunted down every mercenary unit across the entire campus. Igniting a terrifying blue aura around his body, our hero cracks his knuckles with a smirk, declaring that the warm-up is officially over and asking if Jian Long can actually give him a challenge.